Hey there, I'm James. Welcome to Game Stories. This is a series of videos where we are going to write games that tell stories. In the first kind of official video of the series, I'll talk more about what that means, what is a game story, and I'll show you some examples. So if you kind of have no clue what we're doing here, you'll get orientated there. This video series in general is going to be about making stuff. We are going to write game stories, which means that kind of the general idea of the series and maybe each episode will be structured something like this. We'll take a look at some examples. We'll talk about some kind of principle for game story writing. And then I will end with some kind of assignment that says, go do this or go play with these ideas, right? Go make something. Here's some toys, go play with them. Here's some principles for game design, go do it, right? And then we'll move on to some other slightly more complex principle. We're going to start out really basic, really basic. If you already are designing games, it may even feel too basic. But if you've never designed games before or never written a story for a game before, then I think this will be perfect. I think this will be, we'll get you up to speed pretty fast, and you'll be looking at some complicated structures by episode, I don't know, 5 or 6 or something like that. We'll get into variables and if statements and code and maths and stuff like that, which is, if you're a writer like me, all that stuff feels kind of weird. But don't freak out about that too much. You don't need to be good at code in order to be good at writing game stories. In fact, you don't need to know any off the bat. Excuse me. Because we're going to be using primarily a program called Twine, which doesn't require any code at all to get started. But then as we get into more advanced structures, Twine enables us to use a little bit of code at a time to learn how to do slightly more complex things as we go. So it's not going to be heavy. It's not going to be like taking a computer programming course at all. It's going to be like, how do we do the next narrative thing, and what do we need to know to do that next narrative thing? So it's all about the story, and we're just learning as much as we need to do to tell better game stories as we go. You also don't need to be good at video games in order to participate in this. I think some people have a perception that video games are for an elite group of gamers who are super good at them and know all the best games and know how to beat them all and stuff. That's not true in general, even though those people exist and they're good at games. Games are for everybody, right? Arguably. Certainly game designers think so. They want to sell their games to everybody. And this series too is for everybody. Anybody can write a game story. If you've got a little bit of creativity and a story to tell and kind of want to be playful about it, you can do this, right? You don't have to be able to beat Dark Souls or whatever the hardest game is whenever you're watching this video. You don't have to be able to beat that game in order to do well here. We'll look at some examples of games. I'll show you how they play. The thing that we're trying to get out of the games is not how to beat them, but how they work narratively. How do these games tell their story? And you can figure that out without even getting through most of the game a lot of times. So I'll be showing some examples and talking you through them and giving you some leads on good games you might want to play to get a sense of how they work, right? I guess I should say this too. You don't have to be a dude in order to participate in this. It's kind of a silly thing to have to say, but I kind of feel like I have to say it. There's sort of a perception or a cultural problem even where games are often perceived as a male space or a male-dominated space, and sometimes they're even violently defended as such. I don't want this course to replicate that, even though here I am, who's explaining this stuff, a dude, right? But that doesn't mean that you don't belong here. If you feel like, you're not sure if games are for you because you went to the Magic the Gathering tournament and it was mostly dudes there, or because you tried to play D&D one time and everybody at the shop looked down on you because you were not a dude. I don't want to reproduce that here, okay? In fact, if I'm going to teach you about game stories, which that's my job here, is to teach you how to do this stuff, Part of my job then is to create an environment where you feel like you can participate, right? Where you feel like you can be creative and express yourself and you feel included. So if you catch me at some point in the series talking or acting in ways that shut you down, that make you feel like, oh, he's just being another dude talking to dudes, please call me out on that. I know you don't have to, but I invite you to. If you feel like some way that I'm behaving is shutting down a kind of conversation that needs to happen, let me know. And I promise you that in response, I will try not to be a jerk about it, right? A lot of people, when you call them out, they get really defensive because they feel threatened. I will try to step beyond that and just say, how have I screwed up? How has it affected you? And that way I can sort of think about how I need to change my behavior in the future, right? I want to make this a more inclusive space so that more people can participate, including you, whoever you are. You're welcome here. Okay. I should also probably say from the gate that there are kind of two audiences for these videos, which makes it kind of weird sometimes. The first audience is whoever you are. If you happen to find this video on YouTube and you're interested in telling game stories, then yeah, this is for you. The other audience is my students. I teach writing classes, and I'm sure that at some point I'll probably assign some of these videos to my writing students, so apologies to future students who have to watch this. But so sometimes that might create some weirdness in the videos. If you're just here to design games and you're not in my writing class, you might think, why is he talking about X, Y, or Z? Well, it's because I'm saying something to my students. And conversely, if you're in my class and I've assigned this series of videos because I've got some kind of unit on interactive storytelling, or the whole class is designed around that, you may think, what the heck does this even have to do with making me a better writer? Right? Why are we spending time on this? Depending on how I labeled the course, you may not have been prepared for a course on game stories. So let me just say briefly that I think that writing games is really valuable to any writer. But the process that you go through here will challenge you as a writer in ways that no other kind of writing can. And that's because writing games requires writing to an audience that's expecting a high level of interactivity. Players are a more challenging rhetorical problem than readers are. Readers are, well, so for example, if you write a novel or something, you can kind of expect the reader to go through your text in the order that you wrote it, and to sort of receive it as you presented it. And they might be able to do some fancy interpretation that takes the meaning of the text in a different direction than you intended, but they can't do much to change the text itself, right? It's sort of there. Not so with games. In games, your player is coming with the expectation that they're going to be able to mess with your text in ways that you hadn't expected. They're going to play around with it. They're going to try to screw it up. They're going to try to do whatever weird, funny thing that they want to do, because they're there to play, right, as much as they are to read. And if they can get away with doing something funny or interesting, then they will. So part of your job as a game story writer is to structure rules and mechanisms that allow for a high degree of interactivity while still getting your point across. And that's not an easy thing to do. You have to sort of think about designing systems that allow stories, meaningful stories, to happen through player interactivity. And that's a high challenge, and it's sort of an advanced writing challenge. And I think, I'm not sure, but I think there's a lot of skills there and a lot of kind of reflection to be done in the process of learning how to do that that's applicable to other writing tasks. So we'll see. Anyway, that's just sort of a brief overview of what we're doing here. We're going to write games that tell stories. We're going to do that by looking at stories and taking their best stuff and using them for our own stuff. You don't need any special skills. You don't need be a particular kind of person to do this. You just have to be interested in giving it a try. And we'll walk through the process to learn more and more as we go. And if you're in my writing class and this seems weird to you, I get it. It's weird. But I encourage you to give it a shot if you're interested at all in the game thing. And if you're not in my writing class, but you're watching this YouTube, awesome. Please feel free to contact me through the comment section. and I will try to respond to you as we go. So that's it for this video. Looking forward to seeing what you guys make, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.